The warning lights in Kai Morgan's repair shop blinked lazily as the artificial day cycle wound down on Nexus Station. Located in the less reputable Ring 4 section, Morgan's Miracle Fixes had developed a reputation for taking on the jobs that the official repair centers wouldn't touch. Kai wiped grease from his weathered hands, the calluses testament to years spent coaxing life back into dying machinery. Closing in 5, he called to the empty shop, a habit from the days when he'd had assistants. Now it was just him, a collection of salvaged tools, and an encyclopedic knowledge of everything mechanical that humanity had brought to the stars. The doors hissed open, bringing in the cacophony of Ring 4's evening market. A slender figure stumbled through, dragging what looked like a miniature sand dune behind her. "Please," she gasped, her voice carrying the melodic trill of the Vandari species. "I require immediate assistance." Kai's eyes adjusted to the sight before him. The visitor was unmistakably Vandari, emerald skin glimmering under the shop lights, four-fingered hands clutching at what he now recognized as an extremely rare mini-sand spaceship, the kind used by Vandari diplomats for short interplanetary journeys. "Shop's closing," he said automatically, even as his eyes roamed over the vehicle's damaged exterior with professional interest. "I am Vexa Del Nara, junior envoy to the Galactic Council," she replied, her large, faceted amber eyes blinking rapidly, a sign of distress in her species. "This vessel's propulsion system failed mid-transit. I have a critical diplomatic meeting in 8 standard cycles. The authorized repair centers cannot accommodate me until next month." Kai sighed, already knowing he'd take the job. "Let me look," he said, approaching the ship. The mini-sand spaceship was a marvel of Vandari engineering, designed to mimic the sacred sand dunes of their homeworld while incorporating advanced technology. Its bronze exterior should have been shifting constantly like flowing sand, but now it sat motionless, looking more like a badly sculpted statue. He ran his hand over the cool metal. Particle flow interruption in the outer shell. Probably affecting the core systems too. He looked up at Vexa. "These aren't built for human repair. I don't have the official parts. But can you fix it?" Desperation tinged her voice. Kai grinned, the challenge igniting something in him. "I can fix anything. It just might not be pretty, and it definitely won't be official." "Cost is no issue," Vexa said quickly. "It's not about credits. It's about whether you're okay with human ingenuity applied to Vandari sacred technology. Some of your people would consider that sacrilege." Vexa hesitated, her secondary eyelids flicking in what Kai recognized as contemplation. Finally, she nodded. "Necessity overrides tradition. Please proceed." Kai dragged the ship further into his workshop, already mentally cataloging what he'd need. "This'll take at least 3 days. Maybe 4. But my meeting is in 8 cycles, you said. You'll make it." He patted the ship. "She'll be running better than new when I'm done." Vexa watched him with an intensity that made Kai slightly uncomfortable. Vandari were known for their formal demeanor and strict adherence to social hierarchies. Having one in his shop, especially a diplomat, was unusual. "Where will you stay while I work?" he asked, already pulling diagnostic tools from his workbench. "I had not considered that," she admitted. "Are there appropriate accommodations nearby?" Kai laughed. "In Ring 4? Not for someone like you. There's a cot in the back office. It's clean. You can use it." Vexa's skin rippled slightly, a Vandari blush. "That would be most irregular." "Lady, everything about this is irregular." Kai tapped the ship's exterior, producing a hollow sound. "Starting with you bringing this beauty to a human repair shop." As Kai began to work, he couldn't help noticing how Vexa observed his every move with those unsettling amber eyes. There was something in her gaze beyond mere concern for her ship, a curiosity that seemed almost personal. Little did he know that this breakdown would lead to far more than a simple repair job. By the second day, Kai's workshop had transformed into a chaotic landscape of dismantled Vandari technology. The mini-sand spaceship's core components lay exposed, its secrets revealed under the harsh workshop lights. Vexa hovered nearby, her posture rigid with anxiety as she watched the human's hands move through the sacred machinery of her people. "Is it normal for you to disassemble it so completely?" she asked, her voice higher than usual. Kai emerged from beneath the ship's underbelly, his face smudged with a substance that resembled golden dust. "Only way to access the particle flow regulators. They're fried to hell, sorry, completely non-functional." "That's impossible to repair without Vandari replacement parts," Vexa stated with the certainty of someone raised in a society where deviation from standard procedure was rare. Kai merely grinned, that infuriating human expression that suggested rules were merely suggestions. "Watch me." He moved to a cluttered shelf and rummaged through what appeared to be salvage from a dozen different civilizations' technologies. Vexa's eyes widened as he pulled out a crystalline component that definitely wasn't Vandari in origin. "That's a Tellurian quantum stabilizer. It's completely incompatible with our technology." "Not after I modify it," Kai replied, already using a microlaser to alter the crystal structure. "The principles are similar. Your particles flow like sand, creating both your propulsion and your outer shell's movement. Tellurians use quantum particles for the same purpose, just more rigidly." Vexa moved closer, fascination overcoming her initial horror at seeing her ship so thoroughly dismantled. "Our engineers train for 18 cycles to understand those principles." "I didn't have that luxury," Kai said, carefully inserting the modified crystal into the ship's regulator housing. "When you grow up in the outer colonies during the resource wars, you learn to fix things with whatever's available, or you don't survive." His casual reference to hardship struck Vexa. Vandari society was highly structured, with resources carefully distributed according to need and status. The concept of survival depending on one's mechanical aptitude was foreign to her. "There," Kai said, connecting the final circuits. "Let's see if she accepts it." He activated the ship's diagnostic system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the control panel flickered to life, displaying Vandari script that scrolled too quickly for Kai to read. "It's recalibrating," Vexa translated, disbelief evident in her tone. "It's accepting the foreign component." The ship's exterior shimmered briefly, the bronze metal rippling like a disturbed pond before settling again. "She's trying," Kai murmured, patting the ship's flank affectionately. "Good girl." Vexa tilted her head, another Vandari gesture of puzzlement. "You speak as if it's alive." "All ships have personalities," Kai replied without a trace of irony. "Especially ones as sophisticated as yours. She's proud, doesn't like accepting non-standard parts. But she also wants to fly again." Over the next several hours, Kai continued his unorthodox repairs. He replaced damaged circuitry with components salvaged from a decommissioned Arcturian cruiser. When the ship's atmospheric regulator proved beyond repair, he fashioned a new one using parts from 3 different technologies, melded together with an engineering approach that seemed equal parts science and art. Vexa found herself drawn closer, eventually handing him tools before he asked, anticipating his needs as she observed his methodology. The Vandari educational system taught strict adherence to established procedures. Kai's approach, intuitive, adaptive, sometimes seemingly random, both disturbed and fascinated her. "This connection here," she said during their 14th hour of work, pointing to a junction where the ship's navigation system interfaced with the new propulsion components, "won't the energy frequencies conflict?" "They would," Kai nodded, impressed by her observation, "if I hadn't added this." He showed her a tiny device, no larger than his thumbnail. "A harmonic oscillator," she guessed. "Something like that. I made it from an old communicator and parts of a draconian music box. It adjusts the frequencies in real time, keeping them compatible." As night cycle approached on the station, they both ignored their fatigue. The ship was beginning to come together, its systems gradually reintegrating in ways that should have been impossible according to Vandari engineering principles. "You should rest," Kai finally said, noticing Vexa's eyelids fluttering with exhaustion. "As should you," she countered, but the fatigue in her voice betrayed her. "I'll keep working. Used to long shifts. The cot's all yours." Vexa hesitated, then placed a four-fingered hand lightly on his shoulder, a surprisingly intimate gesture for her species. "Your skill honors the ship," she said formally, using a traditional Vandari phrase usually reserved for master craftsmen. Kai smiled, genuinely touched by the compliment. "Get some sleep, Vexa. Tomorrow we'll make her fly again." As she retreated to the small back office, Vexa found herself contemplating the human in ways that extended beyond his technical abilities. In her culture, one's profession was predetermined, skills developed through structured programs and careful oversight. Kai's self-taught mastery, his ability to see connections between disparate technologies, represented a kind of freedom her people rarely experienced. She settled onto the cot, listening to the soft sounds of Kai working through the night, and realized with sudden clarity that her interest in him was growing in ways she hadn't anticipated, and wasn't entirely prepared for. By the third day, the repairs had reached a critical phase. Kai had managed to restore most of the ship's systems, but the final integration required careful calibration, a process that demanded frequent pauses and system cooldowns. These enforced breaks created unexpected pockets of time for conversation. "So," Kai said, wiping his hands on a rag as they waited for the propulsion system to stabilize, "what's this diplomatic mission that's so important?" Vexa perched on a workbench, her long fingers wrapped around a mug of the bitter human stimulant she'd come to appreciate. "I am to represent Vandari interests at the Resource Allocation Summit on Proxima Station. It's my first solo assignment." "High stakes for a junior envoy," Kai observed. "Indeed." Vexa's skin rippled with subtle color changes, a sign of emotional complexity in her species. "My future standing depends on its success. Missing it would significantly impact my career trajectory." Kai nodded, understanding professional pressure all too well. "What made you choose diplomacy?" The question seemed to catch Vexa off guard. "Choose? I didn't. I was assessed during adolescence and assigned to diplomatic service based on my aptitudes." "You didn't get to decide your own profession?" Kai couldn't hide his surprise. "Of course not. How would society function efficiently if individuals simply selected careers based on personal preference?" Her tone suggested she found the concept both amusing and slightly absurd. "Works for humans," Kai shrugged. "I became a mechanic because machines make sense to me. They talk to me, in their way." "And if you had been needed elsewhere? If society required you to be, perhaps, a hydroponic engineer or data analyst?" Kai laughed. "I'd have made a terrible analyst. And society doesn't tell humans what to be, at least, not anymore. Tried that system. Didn't work out." Vexa leaned forward, genuinely curious. "Yet you appear highly competent in your chosen field. How can a system of personal choice produce expertise?" "Passion," Kai said simply. "When you love what you do, you get good at it. Not because someone's forcing you, but because you want to." The concept seemed to trouble Vexa, challenging fundamental assumptions of her culture. She fell silent, contemplative, as Kai returned to the ship to check the stabilization progress. Later, as they shared a meal of station-synthesized protein cubes, palatable to both their biologies, Vexa steered the conversation toward human relationships. "Your species forms pairs based on emotional attachment," she stated, somewhere between a question and an observation. Kai nearly choked on his food. "Usually, yeah. Though all kinds of arrangements exist." "Fascinating." Vandari mating is arranged by compatibility algorithms, with genetic diversity and social cohesion as primary factors. Sounds romantic, Kai said dryly. Romance is an indulgence, not a foundation, she replied, though without conviction. At least, that's what we're taught. And what do you believe? Vexa's secondary eyelids fluttered rapidly, a sign of internal conflict. I have sometimes wondered about the human approach. It seems inefficient and prone to error, yet humans seem pretty keen on it anyway. Kai finished for her, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Precisely. She set down her utensil. May I ask a personal question? Shoot. Do you have a mate? Kai's eyebrows shot up. No. Not currently. Had a partner a few years back, but station life isn't great for relationships. People come and go. So attachment is insufficient to maintain bonds across distance? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Depends on the people involved, the circumstances. He scratched his stubbled chin. Why the interest in human relationships? Vexa's skin flushed a deeper green. Academic curiosity. Cultural understanding aids diplomatic work. Kai didn't appear entirely convinced but let it slide. Well, if you want to understand humans better, you should know we're as varied as the stars. No single pattern fits everyone. As evening approached, they returned to work on the ship, now functioning at nearly 80% capacity. Vexa found herself observing Kai with new awareness, the confident movements of his hands, the furrow of concentration between his brows, the occasional smile of satisfaction when a component responded correctly. Tomorrow she'll be ready to fly, Kai announced as they completed the navigation recalibration. Just need to restore the exterior particle flow, and you'll be all set for your summit. Thank you, Vexa said, the words inadequate for the gratitude she felt. Your assistance has been beyond expectation. Kai grinned, that disarmingly direct human expression. Just doing my job. It is more than that, she insisted. You have shown me a different way of approaching problems. Of seeing connections where my training would have identified only incompatibilities. Something in her tone made Kai look up, their eyes meeting with new intensity. The workshop suddenly felt smaller, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. Cultural exchange, Kai said lightly, breaking the moment. Always educational. But as they prepared for their final night before the repairs would be complete, Vexa knew that her interest in human ways, and in this human specifically, had become far more than diplomatic curiosity. She was experiencing something unprecedented in her carefully ordered life, an emotional response that defied Vandari rationality, yet felt more right than any algorithmically approved connection ever had. Tomorrow the ship would be ready, and decisions would need to be made. The mini-sand spaceship hummed with renewed life, its bronze exterior once again flowing like the sacred dunes of the Vandari homeworld. Kai stood back, wiping sweat from his brow as he admired his handiwork. For days of intensive labor had transformed the broken vessel into something that, while not quite standard issue, now functioned even better than before. She's ready, he announced, pride evident in his voice. I've enhanced the particle flow efficiency by 12%. You'll reach Proxima Station with time to spare. Vexa circled the ship, her amber eyes wide with amazement. It's extraordinary. The integration of foreign components should be impossible, yet she accepts them as her own. Told you she had personality, Kai winked. She knows quality work when she feels it. The completion of the repairs brought a strange tension to the workshop. For 4 days, they had existed in a bubble of shared purpose, the urgency of the repairs creating an intimacy that transcended their different species and backgrounds. Now, with the task complete, reality reasserted itself. I should prepare for departure, Vexa said, though she made no move toward the ship. Right. Kai busied himself cleaning tools, avoiding her gaze. I'll prepare your bill. Of course. An awkward silence fell between them. Kai moved to his terminal, calculating parts and labor costs with deliberate focus. Vexa remained by the ship, her slender fingers tracing the flowing metal of its hull. The summit lasts 3 standard weeks, she said suddenly. Kai glanced up. That's a long meeting. Interstellar resource negotiations are complex. She took a deep breath, a gesture she'd unconsciously adopted from watching him. I will return to Nexus Station afterward. For repairs? Kai asked, confusion briefly crossing his features. No. Vexa moved closer to his workbench. For you. The directness of her statement, so uncharacteristic of Vandari communication styles, made Kai's hands still over the terminal. Me? I have experienced something unexpected during our time together. Her voice took on the formal cadence of diplomatic speech, as if she'd rehearsed this moment. An appreciation for your skills initially, yes, but also for your approach to life. Your freedom of choice. Your passion. Kai stood frozen, uncertain how to respond as she continued. Vandari do not typically pursue interspecies relationships. Our cultural directives discourage it. But these 4 days have made me question many cultural directives. She paused, gathering courage. I wish to explore the possibility of a bond between us. A bond, Kai repeated carefully. You mean? A romantic attachment. A partnership. What humans might call dating, though that term seems inadequately casual for what I propose. Kai ran a hand through his hair, momentarily overwhelmed. Vexa, I'm flattered, but... You need not respond immediately, she interjected. I understand this is unexpected. I merely wish to clarify my intentions before departure. The workshop suddenly felt too small, the air charged with possibilities neither had anticipated when a broken spaceship first crossed the threshold. It's not that I'm not interested, Kai said finally, choosing his words with care. But there's a lot to consider. Biological compatibility, for one. Vexa's skin flushed a deeper green. I have researched this aspect. Vandari and humans are chemically compatible, with certain precautions. Our reproductive systems are different but our pleasure responses are analogous. The bluntness of her research made Kai chuckle despite himself. You've been thorough. Diplomats are trained to be prepared. Her secondary eyelids fluttered, a sign of embarrassment, he'd learned. Perhaps I have been presumptuous. No, Kai said, moving around the workbench to stand before her. Not presumptuous. Just surprising. Up close, the differences between them were stark, her emerald skin against his tan complexion, her 4-fingered hands beside his 5, her tall, willowy frame next to his stockier human build. Yet something undeniable had grown between them during these intense days of collaboration. Carefully, telegraphing his movements to avoid misunderstanding, Kai reached for her hand. Vexa's fingers twined with his, the sensation foreign yet pleasant. I don't know what this is, he admitted, or where it could go. But I'd like to find out. Vexa's skin rippled with iridescent patterns, a Vandari expression of joy. Then you accept my proposition? Let's call it accepting the possibility, Kai smiled. We'll need to take things slow, figure out what works for both of us. The moment hung between them, fragile and charged with potential. Then, with a boldness that surprised them both, Vexa leaned forward and pressed her mouth gently against his, a human gesture she had observed but never experienced. The sensation was electric, foreign, thrilling. When they parted, Kai's eyes were wide with surprise and something deeper. That was an experiment, she finished. Was it acceptable? His laugh was warm with affection. More than acceptable. Though we might need more practice. The tension between them transformed into something sweeter, filled with anticipation rather than uncertainty. They spent the remaining hours before her departure exploring this new territory between them, tentative touches, careful kisses, the beginning mapping of what pleased each species. As Vexa finally prepared to board her ship, the reality of their situation reasserted itself. "I must attend this summit," she said, reluctance evident in her voice. "My career." "Go," Kai assured her. "Do what you need to do. I'll be here when you get back." "You promise?" "Ring 4 isn't exactly a happening destination." "Where would I go?" He smiled to soften the joke. "Yes, I promise." As the mini-sand spaceship hummed to life, preparing for departure, Vexa cast one last look at the human who had repaired more than just her vessel. Whatever came next would be uncharted territory for both of them, a journey neither could have anticipated 4 days ago when a broken ship crossed his threshold. But perhaps, like the incompatible parts now functioning harmoniously within her ship, they too could create something unexpected and beautiful from their differences. 3 weeks felt like an eternity. Kai threw himself into his work, taking on the most challenging repair jobs Nexus Station could offer, but his thoughts continually drifted to Vexa. They had established a communication channel before her departure, exchanging brief messages when interstellar conditions permitted, but the connection was spotty at best. On the 23rd day after her departure, Kai was elbow-deep in the circuitry of an ancient Earth shuttle when his workshop doors slid open. He didn't look up immediately, assuming it was another potential customer. "Be with you in a minute," he called, carefully soldering a delicate connection. "I can wait," came the melodic, familiar voice. "I've waited 3 weeks already." Kai's head snapped up so quickly he nearly burned himself with the soldering tool. There in the doorway stood Vexa, her emerald skin luminous under the workshop lights. She wore formal Vandari diplomatic attire, flowing robes in shades of amber and bronze that complemented her coloring, but her posture lacked the rigid formality he remembered. "You're back," he said unnecessarily, setting down his tools and wiping his hands on a rag. "As promised." She stepped fully into the workshop, allowing the doors to close behind her. The summit concluded successfully. "Congratulations." Kai wanted to move toward her but found himself suddenly uncertain. Their parting had been charged with possibilities, but 3 weeks was a long time. Perhaps she had reconsidered. Vexa sensed his hesitation and closed the distance between them. "I have something for you," she said, producing a small metallic object from within her robes. Kai accepted it curiously. It was a medallion of some sort, crafted from a metal he didn't recognize, inscribed with intricate Vandari script. "What is it?" "A formal recognition of your contribution to the Vandari diplomatic mission," she explained. "I submitted a report detailing how your unorthodox repairs not only enabled my attendance but actually improved the ship's performance." The High Council was impressed. "They're not angry about the non-standard parts?" Vexa's mouth curved in what he now recognized as her version of a smile. "They were initially scandalized. Then the engineering corps examined your work and found it superior to our standard configurations in several respects. You've inadvertently initiated a review of our entire approach to spacecraft design. Disrupting an ancient alien civilization," Kai chuckled. "Not bad for a week's work." His humor faded as Vexa stepped closer still, close enough that he could feel the slightly higher body temperature that was characteristic of her species. "I have also been thinking about our arrangement," she said, her voice softer now. "And?" Kai held his breath, suddenly aware of how much her answer mattered to him. "I have requested and received a permanent diplomatic posting to Nexus Station. It is not a promotion, but it allows me to remain here, with you." Relief and joy surged through him. "You're staying? If that is still what you want." In answer, Kai closed the remaining distance between them, drawing her into an embrace that she returned with equal fervor. Their lips met in a kiss that felt both familiar and thrillingly new, 3 weeks of anticipation making the contact electric. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Vexa's skin was pulsing with those iridescent patterns he now knew signified happiness and arousal in her species. "I've missed you," he admitted. "More than I expected to." "As have I," her four-fingered hands framed his face. "I found myself distracted during crucial negotiations, thinking of your workshop, of you." They spent the evening reacquainting themselves, the initial awkwardness of their biological differences giving way to a playful exploration. Vexa's skin was sensitive in ways human skin was not, responding to the lightest touch with ripples of color and sensation. Kai discovered that the ridges along her spine were particularly receptive, while she learned that the soft skin of his inner wrists and throat brought strong reactions. Their first coupling was hesitant, careful, a bridge between species built with patience and communication. Her body welcomed his with a warmth that transcended the physical, the intimacy of their connection surprising them both with its intensity. What they lacked in instinctive understanding of each other's bodies, they made up for with attentiveness and genuine desire to please. Afterward, lying together on the narrow cot in the back office, Vexa traced patterns on Kai's chest with her slender fingers. "This is not how I imagined my life proceeding," she mused. "When my ship malfunctioned, I viewed it as a catastrophe. I could not have predicted it would lead to this." "Life's funny that way," Kai said, stroking the smooth skin of her back. "Sometimes the best things come from breakdowns. My superiors have authorized me to consult with you on further modifications to our diplomatic fleet," she informed him. "It would be a formal arrangement, with compensation." Kai raised an eyebrow. "They want to hire the human who violated all their sacred engineering principles?" "They want results," she corrected him. "And you have proven capable of producing them. It is very pragmatic. Sounds like I'm rubbing off on you." Her skin flushed darker at the double entendre, something she wouldn't have caught weeks ago. "In many ways, yes." In the comfortable silence that followed, Kai found himself contemplating the strangeness of his situation. A month ago, he had been alone in his workshop, fixing broken machines and living a solitary existence on the fringes of galactic society. Now he was entangled, literally and figuratively, with a Vandari diplomat, potentially on the verge of influencing an entire civilization's approach to technology. "What are you thinking?" Vexa asked, sensing his contemplation. "That I'm glad your ship broke down in my sector," he replied honestly. "As am I," she propped herself up on one elbow to look at him more directly. "There is something else I wish to discuss. The mini-sand spaceship is officially assigned to me for diplomatic travel. Now that you have enhanced its capabilities, it can reach nearby systems with significant speed." "Okay," Kai said, not sure where she was going with this. "I thought perhaps we might use it together. When my duties permit and your work allows. There are many worlds I have never seen except in diplomatic briefings. I would like to experience them with you." The offer touched something in Kai that he hadn't even realized was there, a long-dormant desire for exploration that had been buried beneath the necessities of survival. "I'd like that," he said simply. The next morning, they stood together in the workshop, examining the mini-sand spaceship with new eyes, not as a repair project, but as a vessel for their shared future. "Where should we go first?" Kai asked, his arm around her waist. Vexa leaned into his embrace, her amber eyes reflecting the ship's gleaming surface. "I believe humans have an expression for this situation: the journey matters more than the destination." Kai laughed. "Something like that, yeah." As they prepared for their first journey together, a short trip to a nearby moon famous for its crystalline forests, Kai reflected that perhaps the greatest repair he'd ever made wasn't to any machine, but to the solitary existence he'd accepted as inevitable. Like the mini-sand spaceship with its impossible hybrid of technologies, he and Vexa were creating something new from disparate origins, something that defied conventional wisdom yet worked beautifully. And as they left Nexus Station behind, the stars opening before them like possibilities, Kai knew that this unexpected bond was just the beginning of their story.